Good morning, everybody. So, shall we start our class? As we are in the last concept. Actually, the second chapter name is as an example of a natural resources. Then, what is the name of the second chapter? Yes, it is land, water, soil, natural vegetation, and wildlife. So in here we discuss about all these first three concepts about land, water, and the soil. Now we are left with one more concept. We have actually two. Combined we will discuss both the two concepts: natural vegetation and wildlife. Natural vegetation and wildlife. So, its last concept. What do you mean by natural vegetation? You know the meaning of natural, isn't it? What is natural? Yes, it is like a physically, naturally, which is occurred and which is originated naturally. I think it's natural. The vegetation. What do you mean by vegetation? So, in this word, you might have heard in other different, like some change, different other words which is related to this, like a vegetarian, vegetation, vegetable. These all the words, it has somewhat link. So, what do you mean by vegetation? So, we will go to the related terms and other familiar terms what we know. We know about the vegetables. What is vegetables? Yes, like in Karakari, vegetables which grows. And we make use of that things like a plants to satisfy our need, to satisfy our hungry. It's vegetables, fruits. All those things we call as vegetables. Vegetarian, the people, human beings who satisfy their hungry by having these vegetables as their food, called as a vegetarian. Then this vegetable, we know about the vegetable. So these two words are having direct connection with this vegetation. This vegetable, it is directly proportional to this vegetarian, means the person who make use of the vegetable, they are called as vegetarian to satisfy their needs. Vegetarians, vegetable, this all has connection with this vegetation. Then what do you mean by vegetation? So vegetation is nothing but group of plants. Vegetation is a group of plants. Vegetation. The natural vegetation, the group of plant which naturally occurred. The group of plant which is naturally originated, existed, natural growth of plants without the help of human beings is called as natural vegetation. Right? Growth of vegetation. As we know, the vegetation is a group of plants. Get me? Okay. So here, vegetation is a group of plants. The group of plants which grows naturally is called as natural vegetations. Natural vegetation, the group of plants which grow naturally without the help of humans or human beings is called as natural vegetation. So I hope you understood about natural vegetation. For example, what are those natural vegetation? Yes, forest, grasslands, scrubs, tundra vegetations. These all are as example of this natural vegetation. Forest that grows naturally without the help of human beings, not so. There is no need of adding water, pouring adding that manually. So it is about natural vegetation. Then wildlife. Wildlife. So we have 4 important spheres on Earth's surface. Are the zones, we call it zones. What are those? Yes, it's a lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. You all know about the lithosphere, and atmosphere, and hydrosphere, and also biosphere. We have discussed about this in the last class, in the last chapter. So, what is a biosphere? What do you mean by biosphere? What does this biosphere refers? Yes, it's a narrow zone which has a connect with all other remaining spheres: lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. So this sphere, biosphere, it has a life in it. That means it consists of organs like organisms, or living organisms. So that's about the biosphere. So these natural vegetation and wildlife, these both are main factors which is included in the biosphere. The wildlife. So we discuss about natural vegetation and wildlife. Wildlife, like in the animals, we have 2 groups. That means same like here the natural vegetation. These are the natural vegetation where there is no contact of a human beings with that natural vegetation. That means that grows naturally without the help of human beings. Then there are other vegetations like agriculture. We manually grow the agriculture. We grow the crops there in the field. It's called as agriculture. We add fertilizer. We pour water into that, and we take care about the plants. It's agriculture. It's another one different vegetation. It's a vegetation, and we have another one natural vegetation. These are the 2 factors and 2 divisions or segments in this natural vegetation. Same like in the wildlife. Life is animals. When we were discussing animals, so here we have 2 segments, 2 divisions in animals. One which we nurture, otherwise which we help them to grow and to get help from, to get a use from that. We make them to grow. We take care of the animals. What are those? Like yes, it is a domestic animals. Cow and the goat, sheep. There are many others. It's not horse in the house also. So they comes under the domestic animals. There are other part of animals which lives in the forest that doesn't require the help from human beings. They don't need care from the human beings. That naturally grows, and it has a link with the natural factors like resources. So they are called as wildlife. Means animals which lives there in the forest called as wildlife. Wildlife animals. Wildlife is like a forest. The life which exists in the forest, called as animals. So that's about wildlife. Animals which live in the forest. The same like natural vegetation. This wildlife animals, it doesn't require any help, any care from the human beings. So naturally that grows with the help of natural factors like resources, land, water, soil, and sunlight. So it's about wildlife, natural vegetation and wildlife. Right on? Is that all? Yes. We will move to second or next point. Here, this natural vegetation and wildlife both it has life. So till now, what we discussed, the concept what is there in the chapter, it's all about land, water, soil, natural vegetation, wildlife. In among this, land, water, and the soil, it doesn't have a life. we discussed about this all three concepts. Now we are discussing natural vegetation and wildlife. These two factors are these two examples of a natural resources as a life. So, as I told in the beginning, we have a spheres, 4 spheres or zone of a similarity. Spheres are zone of similarity on the Earth's surface. We have 4 spheres. What are those? One is lithosphere. We know the crust. The litho is nothing but rock. Lithosphere. It's a one sphere. Second one, hydrosphere. The sphere or zone which is made up of water. Otherwise, the sphere, the zone which has more similarity of waters. It's hydrosphere. And the atmosphere. Atmo is nothing but air. The zone which is filled with the air. Or the sphere which is created by air is atmosphere. Then biosphere. So now, the concept what we are discussing, natural vegetation and wildlife, it's related to this biosphere. That means it's a part of a biosphere. It consists, this biosphere consists these two factors mainly. So along with that, the human beings and other living organisms is also included in the biosphere. So but these two are very important. The narrow zone or the narrow path which has connection or which connected with other 3 zones, other 3 spheres. What are those other 3 spheres? Yes, lithosphere, then atmosphere, then hydrosphere. Which is called biosphere. So this biosphere, it has connection. It has a direct link with this all the 3 spheres. Without the land, this lithosphere, biosphere could not be exist. Without the atmosphere, means air. The living organisms like plants and the wildlife or human beings cannot be able to live on the earth surface. This is not. Without the hydrosphere like water, we cannot survive. So this biosphere, it has got help. It's been getting help from all these 3 spheres, and it's connected directly with all these spheres. And this biosphere, it consists of both natural vegetation and wildlife. So not only these two, natural vegetation and wildlife, so human beings, birds and other insects and other living organisms also included in this biosphere. But now we are concentrating on this natural vegetation and wildlife because we are discussing about these two concepts in this. Write down these concepts like points. We'll go for next continuation. We have many concepts to discuss in this. Write down these points. Make it fast. Is that all? So we have another important concept. The term, actually it's a term and you can say it's a concept because it has a vast depth information in this term. It's called as ecosystem. In the last year, means in the last class, in 7th class, we discussed about this ecosystem. You might be knowing the meaning of ecosystem. So here, what is ecosystem? So ecosystem is nothing but interaction and interdependence of living organism with other living organism in its natural environment. For example, so suppose it's a pond. So here we have tree. So you get a fruit. In the pond, you get many creatures like living organisms, non-living organisms in there. For example, suppose it is a fish. You can find even the vegetations there, natural vegetations, plants, small insects inside there in the bottom of a pond, river, and other insects. And it's a land. So here, one fellow like human is sitting here. So it's one of the examples for ecosystem. We have many ecosystems like a pond ecosystem, forest ecosystem, ocean ecosystem. Our whole earth is itself an ecosystem, biggest ecosystem. So here this is this living organisms or non-living organism? Is it biotic or abiotic? Yes, it comes under the biotic. This fish is a biotic. Then how it survives? For human beings, how can humans we survive by having some food? Is not. It may be vegetation, vegetarian or non-vegetarian. So how these survive? By having other insect and small plants as its food. That means this fish, living organism, it is dependent on other living organism. Is it not? So it is dependent on other like insect. By having an insect as a food, it lives, it survives. So it is dependent on that. Here the same this fellow. He is a living organism, human being. He is dependent on this fish. Is connected or interlinked, dependent on other living organisms. This living organism is also dependent on another one. And as suppose he is a non-vegetarian, he will be dependent on this. Suppose he is a vegetarian, he will be dependent on this. Like a vegetarian, where we get from the plants, trees, all those things. But this both, it may be a vegetarian or non-vegetarian, both are living organisms. They are dependent on other living organisms. So it's in the non-living environment. So here, it's a water. Without a water, fish cannot live. Is right. As well as it is connected with this water, it is interacted with these non-living organisms. What is natural vegetation? Sorry, the natural environment, the water. It's a non-living thing. The insects are living things. This whole earth is a non-living thing. It's a natural environment, and it requires sunlight, and it may water and the air. Is not. So here, human being, we are dependent on these living organisms as well as we are interconnected or interdependent with these non-living things like the sunlight, water, land, and all those things. So these interaction or interdependent of living things with other living things in its natural environment, it's called as ecosystem. In the natural environment, we are dependent on. We are dependent on the natural environment as well as we are dependent on other living organisms. Both we require, not only one, both these fish and these plants, both we require along with this all. Without this sunlight on the land, we cannot. Nothing could be existed on the earth's surface without this land. It's not. Land is the biggest example for the natural vegetation. Natural environment. Is it not? So it's called as ecosystem. There in the ocean ecosystem, it's one of the other examples like ocean ecosystem. There, the small fish that survive by eating insects. The other somewhat big fish, it eats this fish like some fish to survive. That the biggest fish there, it survive by eating other fish. It is not. Then the human beings, they catch the fish, they survive. But these fish, even though they are depending on other living organisms, they interacted with the non-living things like water. Without water, there in the ocean or sea, without water, nothing could be existed there. It's not. So it's ecosystem. With the non-living things, we are interacted with the living organisms and living things. It's about ecosystem. In this ecosystem, the natural vegetation and wildlife plays an important role. Natural vegetation and wildlife that plays an important role in this ecosystem. Both wildlife and natural vegetation should be balanced. We should get a same quality of natural vegetation and wildlife and same quality and quantity, both we should get. Then only we can get a balance in the ecosystem. Otherwise, it will be imbalanced. The ecosystem on the earth's surface, it will be imbalanced. When it will be imbalanced, then it will be very difficult to survive, and we can see the end of our earth in the very sooner. So that reason we should protect and we should conserve this wildlife and natural vegetation. So we discuss about this ecosystem. I hope you understood about this concept with the diagram I explained. Now interaction and interdependent of living organisms with other living organisms in its natural environment. Natural environment means mainly the non-living organisms. Is called as ecosystem. Natural environment that refers to. Actually, in the natural environment we have both living organisms, non-living organisms. Here mainly we are discussing this about non-living natural environment. So interaction and interdependence of living organisms each other. Otherwise, with other living organisms in its natural environment is called as ecosystem. So this both natural vegetation and wildlife, these are the two important factors. These are the two important segments or two important things which makes ecosystem balance. Right on this concept.
Sir, your video is after.
Is it over?
Sir, your video is off, sir.
Yes, it's due to bad network. We are not getting a good access of network. That's the reason. Please wait for a minute. You will get that.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we are discussing two concepts together. First, we will discuss the use of natural vegetation. You know the meaning of natural vegetation, is it not? So it's a group of plant which grows naturally without the help of human beings or without the interference or interaction of humans. It's called as natural vegetation. So we will discuss the uses of vegetation, like a natural vegetation. The uses of natural vegetation. What are the uses we are getting from these natural vegetations? From the ancient period, we have been getting uses from this natural vegetation. What are those main uses we are getting? Yes, we get it provides timber. Then the air which we breathe. Then it gives shelter to animals and birds and other insects. It's not animals, birds and other insects. Then what are the uses we are getting from the natural vegetation? Other uses? Yes. This because of this natural vegetation, the erosion of the soil will be reduced. Natural vegetation is a forest, suppose, growing more trees. There, because of a root which penetrated in the beneath of a crust, because of the roots that holds the soil, that will not allow the soil to go along with the runoff water. So it avoids erosion. It's the main uses. It avoids soil erosion. It helps in balance of ecosystem. It's a main factor. It's one of the main factors which helps in balancing the ecosystem. And it moderates the climatic factors. Because of this natural vegetation, like the forest and the grasslands and many other things, so it moderates, it controls the climatic factor of a particular place where it has more natural vegetations there. So these are the uses. Apart from this, we are getting many uses from this, like in the natural vegetation we are getting medicines. It's not. Medicine plants are also available. So I will continue in this second part, means in the second division here. It provides medicinal plants. So write down this concept, the use of vegetation. And other basic uses what we are getting from this natural vegetation, like we get fruits, nuts, then roots, so these are the things what we are getting from these natural vegetations. Right on? And even the paper. After modification of a wood, we get a paper. Is not the basic source for the paper is a natural vegetation, like a vegetation, the trees. So it provides timber and we get a air which we breathe. It's a main and a basic thing which it provides to us, and it gives a shelter to the animals, and it avoids soil erosion. That means it protects the soil, and it helps in balancing the ecosystem. It moderates the climatic factors like high temperature, low temperature, and high precipitation, and the high velocity of blowing wind. It all will be controlled by these natural vegetations and caused by the natural vegetation as well. And it provides some medicinal plants. The paper, we get a fruit, nuts and fruits, it's all a basic one. And now in the modern age, we are using this natural vegetation for this medicine, to prepare medicines, and the paper, and also for the construction of a house. It has been started from the ancient period. Is that all? Okay. So that's about the natural vegetation, and we'll move to discuss the wildlife, the uses of wildlife. Like animals. What are those uses? Yes, we get. It provides milk, meat, hides, and hooves. These are the basic things. And also from the ancient period. In the ancient period, the animals, like wild animals, that widely used for transportation after making it as a domestic animals. Actually, earlier it was a wild animals. Everything was a wild animals. Now, means from the ancient period, when the civilization started to happen, from there, the human beings, we taken them into as a domestic animals. We started to nurture them. We started to help them to grow for getting uses from that. So from the ancient period, we are using them for transportation, and it helps in balancing ecosystem. The same point we discussed in the natural vegetation. It's repeated here in the wildlife. So because both wildlife and natural vegetation, these are the two important factors which makes ecosystem stronger and balanced. It should be both it should be available in the equal quantity and quality, so that the balance of ecosystem will be the same and good. Then what are the other uses we are getting from these animals, like a transportation? Then vultures act as decomposers. It's another main uses we are getting from these animals. In a natural vegetation, what we discussed the last concept, that helps. Yes, so pollination, yes, it will be the wildlife animals. It helps in pollination of plants. It helps in the pollination of the plants. These are the important 5 points about these uses of wildlife animals. Right now? So that's what for this class. Then next class we will continue with the conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife animals.